He's a storyboard artist for the 2002 Masters of the Universe MIP show, but he also did character development for the Warner Brothers Thundercats. And Dan Norton, the art director of the new Thundercats show. And the guy on the end doesn't really need an introduction, but we're going to give him one that probably won't do him justice. Mr. Larry Kenney. So, if there's any feedback on this, I apologize.
Thanks very much for coming.
So we've got the mics.
So, the panel's kind of focused more, I guess, on an artistic level, but we have Larry for to represent the voice actors too. The first question.
But that's not artistic?
It is. Sorry, from a
Who's the voice actors?
So, I guess the first question I have is for Shannon and Dan. Can you explain the differences in your roles on the show and kind of walk us through the collaborative process, start to finish, on how a character was designed or how an episode was made from an art perspective?
Well, I think, for Warner Brothers itself, actually, when they were making Warner Brothers, I mean, they spent a lot of time and energy trying to really hone in on what that look and feel was, and I think it took the course of many years. So at some stage, Shannon
I was on board this from probably, Dan was probably working on it at the same time, but way before the show was even moving forward. So I worked in-house at Warner from 2000, right at the beginning of 2004. So
the initiative to even get Thundercats back on air is really taken, over a decade, before it actually came in, because there were early talks and whispers somewhere around the year 2000.
And the executives I worked with probably weren't even the same. They weren't even around to work on the show by the time the show got rolling when Dan was working on it. So a lot of my career, you're working in-house and somebody says, hey, you want to make some extra bucks working on this thing called Thundercats. Have you heard of it? And you're like, yes, I've heard of it. I like that. And you're all excited. And they're like, okay, I want you to make Thundercats look like Danny Phantom. And you're like, what did you just say? And then you follow that up with, what does this pay? Okay. And then you're rolling. And so a lot of what I did in the early days was not drawing my version of Thundercats or what I wanted it to be. It was what an executive wanted it to be for the meeting they had to go into later that afternoon. So I was very early on. I do a lot of developmental work. And developmental work is not just like, here's my vision, it's genius, take it, make a show. It's usually executing somebody else's vision of something. Kind of like when I put a cape on Spider-Man in the 90s. That was requested by somebody else.
Nice. Yeah, there's really a lot that goes into making a show that goes far beyond just what you see on the screen. I mean, it's just countless iterations, a lot of ideation, and you try to remember what made a show great. And it's hard to put lightning back into the bottle. And I'm sure Larry's had an amazing long-term career. And this guy. But I mean, this
112 next Tuesday.
it's a testament to when you find something amazing. It doesn't just come around again and again. Like, the recipe is hard to get right and repeat. It's special.
And then for all of us who are artistic, comes the realization that for most of the other people it's business. And when the two meet, sometimes it's business always wins, because bottom line, which is why the show is not still on the air. I imagine. I mean, it's not because of us, because we decided not to do it anymore. We still have to eat. And I've said this in a million interviews, and I'll always say it, these guys did an incredible job with that new series. And I just think it's a shame it's not still in production.
Yeah, I was very excited when I heard Dan was going to be driving, because I've known Dan. We started in comics right around the same time, but he stayed in comics, and I went into animation almost immediately, back on the original X-Men cartoons. That's about when I left comics to go into animation. So when I heard that this was going to be the look of it, I knew that I was going to like the look of it, because I also knew that he liked Thundercats. So, and that's nice when you've got that mix of a person who has been put in charge of bringing it forward and you also know they like the material, because we are professionals, and you're not going to turn down paying the mortgage that month to work on something that's in a different version. At the end of the day, I don't own Spider-Man. I really love Spider-Man. I didn't want to put a cape on him, but I told them that. But then after they asked for it again, I gave Spider-Man the best cape he has ever had. That is the job. So loud.
I never wanted to wear a leotard. I still have it, but you don't want to see it. Trust me, it's not a great picture.
So, Shannon, you weren't not at the panel last year. I know we asked this to Dan. Do you have a personal favorite episode of the new show? And also, in extension to Dan and Larry, do you each have a favorite?
I like the first two. I died after that.
Yeah, I mean, the pilot origin episodes are always you watch The Matrix maybe at the beginning of everything, watching is always the fun part, because I was watching those with my kids now, which is different than when I used to have to run home to catch the first 15. I've never seen the end of the Thundercats up until recently, because I had to bike home after school to then football practice started an hour after, and this is high school football, by the way. And so I'm watching 15 minutes of Thundercats and then realizing, okay, I'm going to get in trouble and have to do way too many push-ups and grass drills. So I'm out of here. So for years, I never saw. This is before you kids, they were TiVo and taping things on you. That was it. It was
today with your short hair and your rock and roll music.
Exactly.
We had hair down to here, my God.
So yeah, I mean, it was fun to actually get to sit and watch episodes now when I wanted to without commercials.
Yeah. I remember the first time my kids got a DVD of The Wizard of Oz. Now, when I was a kid, no tittering, but did you have tea right here? The Wizard of Oz was on once a year, and for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, NBC would. And the whole world made sure that they were in front of the TV with the tubes warmed up. Well, now so I remember when my kids first got it, and I walked through the room and they pause it so they can go do this. I said, what? We'll watch it later. No, you can't do that with the Wizard of Oz. Not an exciting story, but okay. No more slice of life story.
Dan still didn't get to answer that question, so before we get, I'm very easily off on tangents. So.
Dude, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the Wizard of Oz.
Let's do it.
What's the, you want to know which my favorite episodes?
No, what was your favorite character?
Oh, my favorite character.
Watch it now.
Yeah, look, I've always been a Panther fan. There's no, it was hardcore, he had attitude, and just even in the intro, that when he was flipping the nunchucks and he just goes, "Wah!" and he does that kick, dude. I mean, I was a martial arts geek growing up. I didn't miss Black Belt Theater or Thundercats, so that was a huge time for me. And I just always loved him. He just had that strength, and Jitsu was mysterious. And
Plus, he knew how to fix a semaphore.
That's right. That's it.
And he had the best character music too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He drove a big tank. And the spikes. Yeah, the spikes. It was a recipe for success. Yeah.
Larry, did you get a chance to watch the new series from start to end?
Oh yes, sure.
Okay.
Sure. I thought it was fantastic. I really did.
So were the first 2 episodes really your favorite? Did you know that was a personal favorite.
I can't even tell you my favorite episode of the original series. I don't think that way. I don't know why. Favorite episode, I mean, even today's TV shows, somebody say, what was your favorite Breaking Bad, or I don't have a favorite episode. I don't know why. My brain just works in a linear way, I guess. I love this show. So, that's a pretty good bullshit answer, isn't it?
It's good.
Remember that one.
It's good.
I did, you asked me about the new series. I will tell you that the original series, and I only thought about this because people have asked me so many times, what was my favorite episode. I love the ones, and I can't tell you, you guys will know. You'll know the numbers, and you'll know what the date it came on. And, but I love the ones where I played Lionel as a little kid, because I'll be 15 years old forever. That's about how old you know. So instead of, Chitara, Penthro, my leg, I can't move, which was about every other episode. His leg wouldn't move. And
He had a leg problem.
you would think that they would have thought we need to get a new Lion-O with a good leg, but no. Instead, I was still Lion-O, but it was like this, Snarf. What am I going to do? So that was more acting. It was more fun to do that. But aside from that, I don't have any favorite episodes. And of the new one, I can't tell you which one. But the first two I thought were really good. You know what? We did a little short thing. Did you write the little? You guys were involved in that little with Lion-O in diapers?
Yeah, well.
Did you guys ever see that?
Yeah.
For the new,
It was around Christmas, like they released that little short with Snarf. Yeah,
Yes.
babysitting
Yeah,
Lion-O.
where Lion-O is Claude is babysitting. No, Lion-O is still a baby. He's in diapers, and Claudius tells Snarf,
Yeah.
I want you to, and it was really touching because, and I didn't realize until about the third time I watched it, but what that actually is the genesis of Snarf becoming Lion-O's kind of caretaker.
Yeah.
Right? Took me 3 times to realize. I'm an actor. And so if you didn't see it, maybe get a chance sometime. It's really kind of cute. And then at the end, when Claudius comes in and says, because during this 3 minutes, however long it was, like 3 minutes long.
Sure.
And as soon as Claudius leaves, of course, Lion-O, the baby, starts climbing on shelves and grabbing stuff he's not supposed to and starts going, Lion-O, get down here. And he just gets him settled down when Claudius walks back in. He looks around and he says, Snarf, I want to talk to you. And Snarf goes, and that's when he tells him something I'm paraphrasing. I think I found the man who's going to look after Lion-O from now on. And I thought, oh, that night. I tear up even now. But and fade out.
Nice.
Credits, big letters.
I was trying to decide if that was a fade out or a wipe.
Yeah, right.
Next season.
It's very Hollywood.
That was actually in the script, but I refused to wipe it.
Yeah, he doesn't do that.
Did you guys use a different animation studio for that sequence? Or was it the same?
That was 4C as well.
Okay.
Then they had another director that actually handled that. It was a very quickly coming together.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably you guys have, maybe you don't, but maybe you do have a lot of questions to like what happens and what went on behind it and all that stuff. Let's see, you got any more stuff? But I'll tell everything. I'll let you guys know.
I budgeted in time for that. Larry, another question to you. What are your thoughts on this version of Lion-O and the other voice that you're most famous for, Jacqueline, and now called Kanar in the new series? And do you feel that the voice actors brought a really new dynamic dimension to those characters?
Oh yeah, they did. And a lot of people, even before the series once the series was announced, there were people on Facebook and things, well, why don't they have Larry Kenney and the other actors? And I would tell them, what's the point of making a new show? If you're going to have it sound the same, look the same, of course you're going to use new actors. And I thought they did a great job of bringing in a new dimension, and all the while keeping the spirit of the original Thundercats. And once I met Dan and the other guys there, I knew that they were going to do that, because the first thing when I met these guys out at Warner Brothers Ranch, wasn't it, in Burbank? They're all going, oh, we're such big fans of the show. And I could tell they were. And I knew that they weren't. See, because I've always been, and I think most of us who worked on the original series, been very protective of the legacy of Thundercats. And I won't go into a long thing about this, and I've talked about interviews before. Not just because it was, I was involved in it, and it was a big hit series and all that kind of stuff. But over the years, I get so many people like you who come up to us and come up to me and told me about what the show meant to you. And it wasn't just entertainment in a lot of cases. It wasn't just, it was a fun show to watch. So many people used to write to me even before emails. We used to have this thing called paper. You'd write. Yeah, I won't go into it. Google it, you'll see what happens. You don't believe it. You don't believe it, but it was like you had to write it out and stamp. And but seriously, people would tell me in varying degrees of detail that their lives, their childhood was not that great, and I knew what they were talking about sometimes. And they would say things like, "But when I went into my room and closed that door and watched Thundercats, it took some of that pain away from me." So that means a lot to me. That means a lot to me. I know what you're talking about. So I've always been very protective. Over the years, there were people who said, you know, we're thinking about doing this with Thundercats, and I said, amazing script. No. But when I saw these guys script talking to them, I said, these are the people to do it, you know, because you know, they love the whole idea that was contained in the original. What was the question? No, I tend to do that. I'm such a bullshit artist that I bullshit myself a lot of times, and I'll think that I've answered the question, and the moderator is like, all right, move on.
All right, so we'll move on.
Appreciate it.
That's awesome.
So back to Dan and
Yeah,
Shannon.
get back to Dan quickly.
Can you give us an idea of how many, you'd spoken earlier about character revisions. How many revisions would a character go through before the final concept? And was there like a personal struggle for each of you to try to inject your own artistic style to the character versus keeping it faithful to the original series? And I guess worried about the fan backlash if you strayed too far from the norm.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, I mean, strangely, I felt really comfortable doing it. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong, you know, like, because I had Thundercats in my blood since I was 12, and it's lived with me forever, and it's just became second nature. And you know, a lot of those initial designs of Leslie Abram, I mean, I went right back to the source and pulled out all the Lord of the Rings stuff, all the Rankin and Bass stuff, and I just poured over it, and I wanted to be true to that sensibility. But it just felt inherent in me because I worshipped it for so long, and so I really didn't struggle. And cartoons are a bullet train. Like, you get on it, there is no like, what that look like? It's all, you have the day to make 9 characters. Go, you know, and so you're in a frenzy, you know, constantly. When you're overseeing a lot of things within the show and the parameters, you're communicating back and forth to Japan, like, there's no time to second guess yourself. I do not know what the back end of my pencil does. But I'm pretty sure it erases, if I'm correct. So that's, it was just draw, and make it happen. And you know, I only got 1 or 2 passes at second pass at best to make things happen. In the very first stages when we were developing the show, the final look at the actual main cast, we poured over that for 5 months, and that was extended from 3 months, just because we had some glitches of how the show was going to get handled and who we were going to go through to be animated and stuff like that. So we got an extra couple months. They just wanted to make sure it got right, you know. And there was, you know, like, we had to look at things, like when we looked at the original, look at the feel of the show, there was a lot of blue and orange. It just, and so you're looking at the team, and I think we've all eaten a lot of popcorn, and we've seen a lot of different shows, and we've seen things work. And in our attempt to kind of make things a little more mature, we want to take the relationships, the characters on screen, a little more seriously. And then we started balancing colors. Like, if you look at how the characters who are on screen or spend more time with one another, we try to balance the new costumes so that they were complementary of one another. But they also, when someone stood in front of another person, that you'd be able to tell who's who and where they're at. You'd add a lot more atmosphere. So we went over that. We really poured over these details. And we wanted you to be able to identify very quickly, like, hey, that's the tank, that's Panthro, so we changed the scale a little bit, you know, because a lot of those characters also were the same size. When you put them in a lineup, they all basically were shoulder to shoulder and fit into the same mold. So I wanted to break out of that. So if you've never heard of or seen Thundercats, you would go, oh, those are the little kids because they're like little thieves. You know, they're smaller, they can fit into the cracks. You know, and then Lionel
Well,
faced
they
it.
could.
Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had that approach to it. You could just identify very quickly. So it's kind of character.
And what he said about the bullet train aspect of it, I mean, we were talking about earlier, Dan was saying, 10 years before the show got rolling. There's no hurry during that period. It's all just, you're just like, everybody's driving you bananas because you're wanting something to happen. I had my own show on the air for a couple of years through Warner Brothers. It's 5 years in development, and then when they decided to go, we were 3 months behind. Before we even started, they're like, all right, we're going, but we should have been hiring already, and you're looking at the schedule and like, this is not gonna work. And that's pretty standard, because
That's the business aspect of it.
they're never in a hurry to spend money. See, when they say yes,
Yeah.
the longer they can put off having to hire the crew, then they've saved money. And then it's the crew's problem to have to deal with how to get this shit.
I say we find these people in suits,
You gotta work
drag them in here, answer the question.
Yeah, make it work. Yeah.
And technology's changed so much. When I started in animation, working under the Mr. Barbera and the old school guys that trained me, we would have a jar of paint. It was number 413 for whatever color, and that animation studio had 413 because they didn't speak the same language as us. And that's probably why there was a lot of blue and orange, because whatever studio was doing the pre-production, they had a lot of that lying around. They're like, well, the boss isn't going to let me buy red, so we'll use some more orange. And we were limited by what we had in the closet. You'd fill out some, but you'd be done with the show by the time the actual supplies showed up for the next show. So you were very much just sort of like, this is what we've got to color key all this stuff with. We're just going to do it. We're going to write down the numbers. We'll send it off. They've got a jar of the same stuff over there. We'll get that back. So you knew what you were getting, but you were limited in what you could send out. Now it's digital. You're finding out right away too. You've got this instant communication. There's not like, okay, Korea, it's this time in Korea.
So you guys span that gap between early in your career, you worked with cells, animations. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Digital. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's very weird. Yeah.
When we started in comics, I mean, we had to it's like, oh, FedEx, oh my gosh, I just got fired from Marvel.
That's
because I missed
literally,
the next
that's
guy.
like going, I mean, this is off the top of my head, which is dangerous also. Going from horse and buggy to guy on the moon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's changed so rapidly just in the last 10 years. Where I went into, you ran into, I've been working at home mostly for the last 10 years because I have kids now and I like to be at home with the kids. But I went into an animation studio recently and there was that quietness where, and it was the lack of the smell of the pencil sharpener that just, I couldn't wrap my head. I knew at home I hadn't been doing that for a while, but to walk into a studio that was basically like this, it was missing that like the constant smell of the pencil in the air.
That's true.
It weirded me out.
Yeah.
So
That's fascinating.
and I'm sure the lack of paint smells too. I'm sure somebody the BG stylist and everything, they probably noticed that too.
Yeah.
Lack of paint lying around the office.
Yeah. And you can actually see people's eyes, probably, because they weren't like, hey.
Oh, we used to have the windows.
Got any more 413, man?
And I don't know that we're progressing, because I remember it used to be, get the windows open, get some natural light in here. It was nice, and now everything's a dark cave.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, everybody's working on the computers. I don't know. I kind of miss the
I'm bummed out.
All right, did we answer that question? Is that,
Yeah, we did.
okay.
So you didn't ask it, but we.
So this is the last question, and I did get pre-clearance from Dan to speak on this. Dan has agreed to tell whatever details you're comfortable with about
I would spill all the details.
the
Every
second-
last one.
the second season of the show that never was.
Damn, not that one. You're a secret producer.
And I'll premise that with, I don't think we have another panel afterwards, Dan, so that's going to kick us out.
Yeah. So here's everything that happened. Oh, well, sorry.
Buy the
guys.
book.
Yeah.
Stop by my table. We'll sell you.
So actually, a lot of people have wondered, and I've gotten a lot of amazing fan mail, and the following was pretty immense for the new series, and I would have loved, first and foremost, to finish this story. We built it for 52 episodes. As a matter of fact, we even built it for 65 episodes. Like, we knew where we were going and what we were doing. And we had a lot of surprises in store for a lot of people. You know, we really took it seriously. We tried to implant as many Easter eggs as we could that drew back to all of the greatness that the original series implied. And, you know, even through 132 episodes, didn't necessarily get to tell all the great stuff that I think that it set up. And so we were trying to hone in on some of that and bring it to light. And really push the characters and bring them about in dramatic ways. And, you know, even to go to Pumaira. Pumaira was one of those characters we loved from the first series, but then she kind of fell into this nursemaid role, or like, you know, hey, let me heal you guys. Let me, you know, she kind of fell in the back a little bit. And I always thought she was a really clever design, and I thought she was interesting. But to a story audience, if I were to just bring her in, or our team, should I say I, but if we were to bring her in, you would expect that she's just good. And I didn't want that. And again, we looked at it and we said, look, we can't give you what you expect, but we know what you want, and you want her to be good. And, you know, what we found in that was more or less a great morality struggle, you know. And so when she died, you know, she believed in Thundera like nobody else, and she was just like, I'll fight for the cause. And when she's left in that rubble, and she can see just in the distance, she's been buried under this for 3 days, and she can't yell out, help me, you know. And her king turns his back on her. That festering of like, why did you help me, you know, was just enough for Mumra to grab and go, hey, and now I know how to infiltrate the Thundercats. You know, I'm going to use her as a spy. I've got her soul captured. And in doing so, you know, she'd be this character that, you know, is actually telling Mumra. She had a necklace, which it was hard to pick up on, but it was a little pyramid necklace. And that was what was binding her to Mumra's will to some extent. But in that, she started to crave the power that Mumra could provide to her. And her struggle would be to be seduced by this darkness. But at the same time, you know, she sees the greatness in Lion-O. She sees that as he saw the potential in her to be good, she sees the potential in him to be a great leader. And she didn't want to betray that. And so she's kind of in this weird place, and Lion-O, to her, you know, to his detriment, would be willing to sacrifice his life to free that goodness in her, to save her from those bonds of Mumra. And what we didn't get to reveal with her specifically is that she would eventually request from Mumra, because she would be doing the job that Slide cannot. And as Slide was kind of the commander of the mutant army, he's failing. He cannot capture the Thundercats. Everything he's done has been to fail. And here is Pumaira now coming in to say, hey, look, I've done this and this, and she's going to win. She's going to constantly be at the throat of the Thundercats. And because she knows them intimately. And so the idea was, she's like, Mumra, give me the power. Give me the real power so that I can finish the job. And he says, it'll come. I can give you that power, but it's at a price. It's going to be at the price of your beauty. But it's worth it. And she says, I'll take it. And she was going to get transformed into this wicked, insectoidish kind of hybrid creature. But she would have this power, and she's like, oh, now I'm going to finish
This
the
would
job.
be a hell of a series.
Dude, right? So eventually she would catch up to Lion-O and the crew, and she would have him dead to rights, ready to finish the blow that she didn't get to enact from the pit, you know, where she basically got his loyalty, you know, by saving him, sparing him in that pit. She's now willing to deliver that final blow. And Tiger, knowing that she's going to take this shot, Lion-O, to his detriment, was going to say, you know, like, I won't fight back. I still won't fight back. I believe in you, and I believe in, you know, just be good. You can change this. You know, don't give up on yourself. And she's like, not this time. She's about to do the strike, and then, why would you give up on her? You know, and he's just like, dude, I'm your brother, man. Like, I can't let you be killed. Yeah. So, you know, these are one of the characters, you know, like, these are all the things, the answers that come. I have so many layers of details for these stories that I just want to totally tell you guys.
Sketches too.
Do me a favor,
There's
though.
lots of
Don't
drawings.
tell Peter Lumen about that.
I know we're limited on time, but I really want to tell you one more
Yeah,
story.
go.
And that is the story of Slithe. Slithe, we were going to give his own, like, episode specifically. Because,
Remember Slide?
like, if we know about, like, what you know about Slithe, we were going to break all of your expectations, right? So, when we recruited Jackalman and we recruited Monkey, it was very visceral what they wanted to do. They wanted the scouts of Thundercats because they were simple, they were maniacs, they were crazy, they were deranged. It was easy to motivate them, to give them some power. But we never told you what Slide's purpose was, and that was on purpose. Because in Thundercats we have a lot of gray, and you didn't know really what was what. So let's go back for a moment when we meet, what's his name? Now I forgot his name. Like, are you kidding me? No, Linkso. Okay, so Linkso and Slithe have a past. And the idea was when the Thundercats in their day were expanding their territory for power. They were looking for more and more land, and the idea was that in this land grab, as the Thundercats expand their territory, they pushed the reptiles, the lizardmen, into the swamps. And the lizards were fine with that. They were like, hey, look, this is our life. We'll make do. And bringing into this tribal sense of what the lizardmen were, they had a special festival. And that was the Day of the Hatchlings. That was where, if we noticed, there was no women. There were no women in the lizardmen tribe, right? So the idea is that in these marshes, just like alligators or other lizards, they would go and lay their eggs in these marshes. And once a year, the hatchlings would be born, and the females would go out to the marshes and escort their children back to the tribe. And the men would go out and bring the big the prize, the meat prize for this festival. And in doing so, we've kind of split them off. Well, in order to expand the territory, Claudius says, burn those fields. We could use those for Thundercats' lair, to kind of expand our lands. Unbeknownst to them, this order was issued to Linkso, and he lit these fields ablaze, and in that dies all of the mothers and the children. And that is what sparks the hatred of Slithe. He becomes the William Wallace of the Lizardmen, and he recruits all of his Lizardmen tribe, and they fight relentlessly against the Thundercats to say, how dare you destroy, our women and children.
They actually had Mel Gibson lined up.
There it was. So the idea would be now that we're showing you why he's at odds with the Thundercats, but more importantly, he constantly loses. This is something that continues and continues until he literally loses all of his friends to this cause, and he still never gives up until the point where he is at his lowest point, where all of his friends have died, and he's at the gravestone of his wife. And he says, I've tried everything. I can't avenge you. And I've thrown everything I have in it. I will do anything if I could. I would give my soul. And that's when Mumra shows up and he says, I can help you. And so that's the deal with the devil that he made. But in doing so, he sees that his lizard men are becoming enslaved by Mumra's will. And he didn't want that either. And so the idea is, like in the fight for the Soul Stone, or the one of the magic stones, is that he sees that Lionel's potential to unite the races. And what we've seeded in Lionel saying, dude, we can have peace. We don't need to have slaves. This is wrong. Like, we should do this. Let's work together. Slithe will then recognize, like, kid, I can't do this, but you can, and Lionel would be like, what? And so Slithe would be the one who turns on Mumra, grabs the stone, gives it to Lionel, and says, "Go for it, kid." And he turns on Mumra to kill him, and Mumra just goes, and he would kill Slide. Yeah. So we would lose a lot of characters. And even prior to that, the Linkso battle, we would bring Linkso back, and Linkso became a prisoner of war. So we pick up back with him, and he's in this camp where some of the other refugees of the Thundercats had basically been, in the camp with him, but they're dying, and he's blind, right, of course, but he's the most enduring of the generals. And Panthro and Tigra would have come in to save him from this POW camp. And as they're extracting him, this is where we do a lot of these reveals with Slide and whatnot. But the idea is we're building up this animosity within Slide to stay in this episode. And, again, he loses and loses and loses to the point where Mumra says, "Dude, your job is revoked. Like, you're done. I don't need you in my army, really, anymore." And that just kind of fuels the fire in him, to the extent where he'll do anything to kind of win. And while Panthro and Tigra and Linkso are trying to escape in this from this POW camp, eventually they get split off, and Linkso, knowing that in this Tigra would be wounded or something and Panthro's having to carry him, Linkso's like, "Look, hey, I've escaped 37 times from these lizard camps. Dude, I'll go back. I've got valuable information. They're not going to kill me, And so the Thundercats say, "All right, man, we'll be back for you. We'll find you again." He's like, "No problem." So then we have this excellent battle between Linkso and this Slide, who is, at his wit's end with Mumra and needs to prove himself even to keep his own life. And so they come together, and at this stage, essentially, Linkso is like, "Hey, I'm a soldier, man. Nothing personal. It just is what it is." And Slide says, "No, this is very personal." And he takes his axe and just cuts off Linkso's head. Yeah, it would have been crazy. So, and trust me, we had battles at the WP. They're like, "You're gonna kill people?" I'm like, "Dude, we're killing people. We're gonna kill them all. Like, everyone's gonna die." Because really, that's what tells great stories. Is like these heroes' deaths are motivating people to these levels. I'm like, dude, kids. If you watch any Disney movie, the bad guy always dies. And it's in shadow. It's tastefully done, and we would do the same thing. Dude, I don't know. Now I'm torn. I can't really sympathize with the guy. So these were our goals: to constantly play with your emotions, and go back and forth, and kind of twist it up of like where we see these people stand in this. Children's cartoon, right? So,
I don't know about you, but I feel like I just saw.
All right, so we'll open it up to questions from the crowd.
So, you mentioned the fact that it's a children's cartoon,
Yeah.
and as a result, Cartoon Network are like, well, it's not really a children's cartoon anymore with all these dark themes. And I guess the majority of the audience now are the European who have this relationship with these characters. In the Blue Sky world, would this ever see the light of day in a graphic novel, perhaps? Or?
Okay, so a few layers of questions here. First, I never saw it as a kid's show. It was my Thundercats. It was our Thundercats from the 80s, and we're all back to see what happens. And I wanted to kind of go back to that. Listen, like I said, we've eaten a lot of popcorn, and we know what makes good stories and what isn't good. And to pay it off in a way that we can enjoy it, but share with our children and say, hey, look, you can't shy away from death. Death is a part of life, and this gives you appreciation of these characters. Is that the stakes are high, and anyone could die.
It goes back to Bambi.
Yeah, it does. All of it. I cried in Bambi when I saw that. The
Nemo.
Nemo, all of it. Yeah, it's
Most movies make me cry like the first 10 minutes for my kids. Way to go.
So in that term, I always saw it as an adult show, and I think we all did. All of us who worked on the show, we said, hey, look, let's give it to them as it is, you know, like we can be respectful to children, but we'll never pander to them, you know, and make them come up to our storytelling levels, you know. When it comes to following up the show with a graphic novel, that goes into a whole other realm. I wish I had any kind of control over that. I would love to do more of it. Comics do not pay enough money to keep the bar of quality high to achieve that. Like, to keep it even on status with the show, but like, because I think we did a pretty good job, you know, like visually with the show. I would settle for nothing less, you know, for a long-term comic or, you know, like a nice graphic novel. It would have to be invested with great artists, and, you know, in my opinion, you know what I mean? Why the show didn't continue? There's many layers. You know, we've kind of talked about the bit of the business of show business, and you know, corporate decisions get made, and there's things. I can speculate on a lot. I don't work for WB anymore. I don't mind telling you. You know, the truth is, I mean, gee, Lego Chima came out looking just like Thundercats, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, not to put anything in bad light of like of anyone, because Lego is great, you know, WB is great, but the decisions made, like you see stuff like that, it's you know, they want to make a Lego Thundercats, and licensing fees are expensive. You know, what people want to be compensated for that, you know, that's expensive. And really to go circumvent that, you make your own thing that's just like it. And
They own it.
yeah, Warner Brothers and Lego have a great partnership. They do a lot of amazing stuff together. And, you know, in my opinion, I know that they were talking about this stuff. And so I think if you have to put the numbers together, you understand that Thundercats wasn't performing, you know, like because it was on half an hour a week at a strange time slot, and they were depending on 6 to 11-year-olds to watch this to buy the merchandise for, you know, toys that they didn't know for a show that they don't know even exists. You know, like their mommy and daddies are like, "Hey kids, you ever heard of Thundercats?" You know, and they're like, "What's that?" You know, like 6 to 11-year-old is up on Friday night at 8:30 at night watching a show. So, I mean, there was a lot of reasons why we couldn't hit the markers. Although critically, everyone was really happy with the show. You know, fans were really happy. I mean, it was great entertainment, and I think that was apparent. We were the number one show, and like our age demographic, 1834, like all the stuff that was coveted for night time on Fridays, like we were beating live action shows, and like we held those spots. But in terms of animation rules, especially when you have these big powerhouse companies, you know, you have to worry about the business aspect of it. And
Toy sales.
I was gonna say, it's common knowledge on our end of things, it may not be for the audience, but toy sales are more important than ratings.
Yeah.
I've worked on a number of number one rated shows that get canceled because either the toys
Sure.
are underperforming or they didn't get the toy line off. Because the toys take like 2 years to ramp up, and like we were saying before, development guys, everything's going so slow, then suddenly you're rolling, and then it's not this magic timing with the toy company also to where they're coming out at the same time. The toy company's not going to jump on something after it's already started. And sometimes the trains cross and it doesn't work out, and you've got a number one show that gets canceled.
yeah. So, you know, that happens.
Awesome. First off, love the show so much. There was only 2 things wrong with it. One, it didn't have the epic theme song of the 80s, and none of them Larry.
Oh,
Yeah. No, we definitely want to bring Larry back. Like, he is a staple. We love to have him. The reason why, when you look at the music, there is massive, comprehensive literature, law-wise, on like why music and who gets what money and how that works. And to be honest, we turned dimes into dollars. It was a necessity to work 18, 20-hour days on this show. You get paid for 8. You know, that's the kind of level, like you have to do 3 to 5 people's jobs if you want your show to succeed on levels, you know, that are going to be sustaining, you know, for a testament of time. And music-wise, we couldn't afford millions of dollars to pay out for licensing. It wasn't possible. And so we were able to negotiate 30 seconds of a clip of music because we have a finite budget, and it's just, as much as you can do with it, you're so limited by, the business aspect at times. You can't be fully creative, and we can't use all the good stuff.
Does everybody know who wrote that theme song?
Yeah.
The Inside the Actors Studio guys.
No, that's wrong.
That's
Actually.
wrong?
Yeah, that's wrong.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is good.
Yeah. But even on a side note, too, the way that, even as we touched on, the way that animation has changed over the years, the way that music was made for animation is the master tracks and the sound effects were all on one master mix. And that stuff wasn't preserved in layers and stuff like the way through technology where they can do today. It didn't happen in that way. So we could get the theme song and then pew, pew, you start hearing stuff and you can't reuse that. So we would have to actually remaster it or actually re-record it. And so that became a massive nightmare. And so, these are the little technical glitches you just come into and you're like, there's no way we're going to be able to do this, especially when, again, we're on a bullet train. We were doing episodes like, it's laid out in about 16 weeks, right? But they give you a week to say, all right, come up with all your magic ideas, make it fresh and cool, and if you don't, you're in trouble. I'm like, what? So you get a week, and we're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, all right, let's do this, and we do this. And then you got, even within that time, we had 2 weeks to basically create the characters. So now I'm not only helping with story, and the other guys are putting in story, but now I have to draw. I have to draw all this stuff, and then I have to communicate with Japan, and I have to do all these things on all these other levels. And these shows are stacked on one another. So through progress, because we have about like 3 or 4 teams of guys in Japan at 4C, and they were taking stuff intermittently. So you're working on several shows at once, and you just don't have the human bandwidth to like measure and track every little nuance. We have a skeleton crew who's small. We have to be quick and just make stuff happen. There's just no way around it.
And ideally, the designs are all done before you start storyboarding, but that happens so rarely.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I'm storyboarding something and you're just drawing a blobby figure talking, and you don't know if the figure should be looking up or they should be looking down, which means you're going to have to go redo everything you did.
Yeah.
So you keep everything loose, thinking you're going to get the designs, you turn it in, and then it ends up being the director's job to go back in and tighten that stuff because you've already moved on to the next episode. It's just stuff just starts happening, and ideally you've got time to plus everything to make it perfect, but that's not the job.
The moral here, kids, is be an accountant, be a teacher,
That's your ways to make money.
There's a lot of
a
firefighters.
miner would be easier.
Thank you guys for making an amazing show. I loved it. I bought all the toys. I was supporting you guys. I told people about the toys. So I'm sad that it was mine. Literally, I made a video about how sad I was that the show ended because it was my favorite show.
Sure. We watched your videos.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
we honestly we made it a point very early on to be there with the fans on every level as much as we humanly could during the time. And to this day, I try to answer every piece of email, everything that's come from the show because I'm as much as a fan as I think all of us are. And it's to me this thing needs to carry on. It's such a wonderful show, and it's got amazing characters, and it'd be a real travesty. That a show like this doesn't get to continue. So I appreciate and love all the support and all the even the people that dumped on us that were like, you suck. Dude, come here. Air hug you. Yeah. Question. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna lighten up the mood a little bit with all the pressing news of it's not going to continue. It makes me really sad. But one of the things that whenever the show was officially announced, for years people were always talking about it. It was officially announced, and I didn't get my hopes up. Because it had been announced before, not really.
Yeah.
And, I had seen some fan designs that were toted off as being, these are official new designs, and they were horrible, and hated all of them. And so I was on the fence. I was like, I'm not going to get my hopes up because this is something very near and dear to me, and I don't want to get my hopes up and then watch it and it'd be the worst thing in the world. Loved it, absolutely loved it. I will say that Snarf gets a lot of hate. He has always gotten a lot of hate. And I have always loved Snarf. He always makes me smile every time he says his little lines, to be little nanny, little mommy voice of don't do that, that's dangerous. and, and Snarfer. I love Snarfer. And I was really upset whenever I started watching the new show and Snarf didn't talk. But literally 2 seconds after seeing him running around, he's too damn adorable to be angry at him. I want a Snarf in my home.
Do you want to know what Snarf was really about? Like, all right.
Yes, go. And I also want to know what was the reason why he didn't actually speak. Like,
Okay, Snarf was going to be absolutely invulnerable to any kind of damage. And so when we showed it very quickly on the first episode, if you saw him fall from that tower when the horn blew and he fell all that way and he landed into the water. But there's lots of times when Snarf would get electrocuted, he was going to go through traps, and you'd see him never get destroyed, and you'd wonder why. But he is the grandfather, if you will, of the entire Thundercats race. Yeah.
mind blown.
Yeah.
I love you all.
So and I'm going to go back, even episode 7 in Legacy, where you saw Lionel at the controls as Leo, the first Thundercat. He was all like, beep, boop, bop, boop, beep, doop, like, like what that was. What he was inadvertently doing was freeing Snarf from a cage inside Mumra's pyramid. And when Snarf goes through the vents, he starts stepping on wires and ripping things apart. And that is what causes the ship to crash into Third Earth. So, again, we do a lot. We had all this planned for this retrospective storytelling and understanding where these things come from. And we were even going to revisit Panthro, like in his time when he fell down into the depths of the pyramid. What happened to Panthro, and how did he get out? And we were going to have Panthro, like he'd broken his leg down there, and he's surviving eating bugs in the vents of this place. And he's got a beard, and his hair is long, and for several years he was going to be in this pit trying to find a way out. And in doing so, through the vents, he could also hear Mumra and Groom building the army and reactivating troops. And he's like, oh my God, how am I going to stop this? How am I going to get out of here to warn the Thundercats? And in his stay, he would actually come across the cage of the experiment at 621-4, and the cage is blown out. He's all like, oh my God, I don't know what was in here, but it must have been big. And that was actually Snarf, like that's the whole thing. So.
Do you ever sleep? With these things going through your mind, I would never be able to sleep.
I dreamt about this, I tell you, for years and years and years. And so I had a lot of fodder for like what was coming. And then just the creative minds, Michael Jelnick, Ethan Spalding, Todd Casey, us sitting in a room, and all the wonderful writers that came along too, that really worked on all the episodes. All fantastic. But between us four, really sitting down and having these wonderful conversations about like sharing all this, like, oh, we can do this and that. It was the greatest experience of all time. And building these nuances of these characters, Snarf especially. I mean, I love the idea of something being in your face, something very ordinary that is most important, that has been with you all along, and that would become somehow your savior in a weird way. Like that's the tool to save you from destruction. It's Snarf. So Snarf would stand in front of that. I have so many major spoilers for you guys. I don't know that we have the time, but literally, I could spend hours telling you about all of the amazing stuff that we had planned that we never got to see.
I'm just a little bummed that Lionel wasn't really in charge of anything, was he?
Oh, no.
It was all a facade, wasn't it?
Lionel was really a girl. No.
I knew it! Well, the leotard alone,
One more quick question. I know you had it.
Yeah.
Let's take care of these Thundercats once and for all. So it had to be part of that slow burn, and giving him that vehicle would let him kind of get around without having to be outside, because we knew that light was a factor for him, and that was kind of carried out from the old show. We're always hitting on those bits, and he had a bit of a vampire kind of build to him to some extent. So we wanted to stay true to that, and at the same time give him something cool. I like that the Dracula movie, I always thought was fresh, where Dracula had to go in that dirt, like when he's on that boat, he was traveling across it. I just like the idea of him being, kind of confined to a space waiting to pop out, you know, like in the dark. I thought that was kind of interesting. So, yeah, again, man, without going into even more stories and more stuff that we had developed, there was a significant scene that happens with the Storm Charger that eventually, you know, because the Thundercats they only have one Thunder Tank against an army of Mumra's troops, and they're like, we need more Thunder Tanks. We need more equipment. What are we going to do? You know, so I don't want to give it away without going into the story context, because it's much cooler. I tell the story. Exactly.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
You could do a podcast.
Yeah. Dude, I would love to. I would love to, because I think, you know, me personally, I feel like I owe it to you guys. You bought into it, you wanted the whole story, and I want to give it to you. You know, you deserve it, and I totally want to reveal every last detail and put it into the context that's deserving of that story.
Dan Norton for president.
So, before we conclude the panel, is there anything that you want to update us on as far as current projects or anything that you want to plug?
Yes.
Larry?
No, I keep eating Skittles. And,
How chocolate was that?
feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow. Keep watching Best Week Ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best weekend ever.
Keep watching Diggle. What else am I doing? That's about it.
Yeah.
And keep eating Cocoa Puffs.
I really do have to pee.
Sir.
That's it. That concludes the panel.
Yeah,
Dan, unless you guys want to.
You guys can stay.
Plugs.
Reading comics again. You guys are Lion Forge. We got the Miami Vice, Knight Rider, Galaxy Rangers license, Werewolf. Some fun stuff coming up. And then, so it helps if that one's number one.
Nice.
You don't have to stress about it.
I now work for Riot Games, actually. Should I say Riot? So if any of you are familiar with League of Legends,
Yeah.
go play that game. And if you haven't, go play that game. It's an amazing game, amazing company. And they've got an entire stable of amazing champions that we're working on making some amazing things. So, yeah. Wish I could tell you more, but I just say go play the game. League of Legends is an amazing game. If you haven't got a chance to play it, it's just amazing. It's free to play. Go check it out. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And great things are coming from Riot Games. Yeah.
All right, one more round of applause for Shannon.
And for all those still paying attention, Silverhawks and Tiger Sharks would have been in Thundercats.
Yeah, you did. That's awesome. Yeah, seriously, you need to do a podcast. I would listen very quickly. These stories are like fun. Dude.